Hmm. No, no. Oh, come on. Let's see here. Get this. Just. Oh, no, that's not it at all. Uh, all right, let's try this. Come on. No, come on. Come on. Just a little bit further. Oh, aha. There we have it. Stay. Stay. Okay, good. Now then, now that we've got that fixed up, sorry about that. We had a little bit of transmission problem there last time, so I had to do a little maintenance. So now that we're done, on with the show. So, see you in a minute. Hello, and welcome to Chapter 16 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today, we're going to be talking about an interesting little book written by, technically speaking, two authors. The first author is Gareth Roberts. He is the actual author of the novel. However, this novel was written, adapted from a screenplay, and the screenplay was originally written by Douglas Adams. Yes, that Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What book am I talking about? I am talking about Shada, the Lost Doctor Who adventure. Now, this wonderful little book is an adventure originally developed for the Fourth Doctor. And as near as I can tell from what's been written, for any of you who know Doctor Who timelines and whatnot, it appears to be taking place sometime after the events of the Key to Time story, which was an entire season long, 6 complete story arcs, all mashed together in one season, about the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker's Doctor, running around trying to get all the pieces of the Key to Time and deliver them to the White Guardian. Now, it takes place after that, but there is also a scene in it which is practically directly from the scene of a later Doctor Who adventure, the one being The Five Doctors, which had the first 5 Doctors technically in it. Tom Baker wasn't in it much. There was a little scene of him with Romana poling down a canal and having a delightful little conversation before he gets quote unquote captured. Only something goes slightly wrong and he's stuck in the capture thing, so you don't really see him otherwise. And then he gets deposited back at the end of that particular one, none the worse for the wear, and doesn't seem to really notice anything. There is a scene of that particular poling through the canal in this book, which makes me think it not only happened after the Key to Time, but considering that the 5 Doctors is centered around Peter Davidson's Doctor, the 5th Doctor, who happens to be after Tom Baker's Doctor. So this is happening at the same time as the 5th Doctor, who's later. And, well, time travel. It's fun. So what's this book about? This book is about a book. I know. Interestingly enough, it is about a specific book, that one of Gallifrey's books that was taken from it, called The Worshipful and Ancient Law of Gallifrey. It has a wonderful little bit at the beginning here. I'll show you. Right here. See all these wonderful weird symbols? Gallifreyan language. Now that says figure 1, which is what that picture is. These words are carved into the Maconite plinth upon which rests the worshipful and ancient law of Gallifrey, one of the great artifacts of the Rassilon area, and anyone Rassilon era. And anyone who knows the Doctor Who knows who Rassilon is. Uh, they are here reproduced by kind permission of the curator of the Panopticon archives, the capital, Gallifrey. Translated from Old High Gallifreyan, they read, roughly, "If this book should care to roam, box its ears and send it home." And that's the book that this book is about. This book ends up on Earth in the hands of another Time Lord who happens to be retired. He's on his last regeneration. He chose to retire at Cambridge. He's an old professor there called Professor Chronotus. And the Doctor has known him for quite some time and is there visiting. Mostly because Chronotus sent him a message saying, please come. So he shows up and finds out that this particular book, the ancient and the worshipful and ancient law of Gallifrey, he may have accidentally borrowed it. And he wants the Doctor to kind of return it for him before it gets into trouble. Now, someone else is looking for this book, an evil villain by the name of Skagra, and he wants this book so he can basically kind of take over the universe. Villains, what can you do? So there's a whole lot of things going on back and forth and whatnot. The Doctor's there, Romana is there as well. There's also a couple of other characters, Earthlings, a couple of Cambridge students, undergraduates, who are pretty smart in their own right, but have nothing on the Doctor or any of them. And all of these are going together and having great fun. Now, the reason why you should be reading this, especially if you like Doctor Who, is that this book is pretty much word for word, right from the start, right to the end, very much classical Fourth Doctor style, what's the word I'm looking for? Adventure. It's a classical adventure of the Fourth Doctor. Tom Baker is the Fourth Doctor in this. I mean, you can practically hear Tom Baker's voice being all blustery and silly and clownish and bouncing around and being his usual supremely clever self and congratulating himself on being his supremely clever self. The villain in this one, Skagra, is a little different from normal Doctor Who villains. A lot of the normal Doctor Who villains get all kinds of upset and angry at the Doctor, and Skagra tends to keep his calm. He's a very methodical, logical fellow. And he's no slouch either. In fact, he is not only a genius in his own right, he is a genius in other people's rights as well, which you'll kind of get the point when I get to the read bit at the end here, because it all deals with that. Now, you should also read this because it's Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams, if any of you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you'll know how amazing a book that is, or a series of books. They are intensely funny, hilariously well written, little bits of parody and satire thrown in as well to poke fun at certain things. And there's a little bit of that in here too. I believe possibly poking fun at Cambridge and British stuffiness and all this good stuff. But it is an amazing series. An amazing book, I should say. This particular one, as is Hitchhiker's Guide. And it is an easy read as well. I mean, it's Doctor Who. How can it be hard to read? But it is so easy to read. There's quite a lot of chapters to it, even though it's not that thick, because he keeps the chapters short. They don't go on for 20 pages. Some of the chapters are only like 2 pages long. So it's really short and keeps things able so that you can pick it up, you can read a few chapters, you can put it down if you have to. And that sort of thing really makes for a nice, easy read. What else is there to say about Doctor Who? As you can tell, I'm a big fan of Doctor Who. I have loved the series ever since I used to watch it as a kid. I love it even more now that it started back up again. I've got some of the other books of Doctor Who set with the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor? Yes, the 11th Doctor. Not the 10th, actually. I only have the 11th. But I'll be looking at picking up some more of the other ones. But this book, is one of my favorites because it is full of charm, and just that almost an older type of comedy and enjoyability from like the older days of TV. I mean, back when Tom Baker was on Doctor Who, this was several, like at least 30 years ago, and it was a different time entirely. It was a different time in the world. It was a different time on television. Things were just kind of dialed back a bit. There wasn't a lot of this intense drama stuff. It was almost melodramatic in a way, but melodramatic in a good way, not a bad way. So yes, do I think you should read this? Shada, The Lost Adventure of Doctor Who? Yes, I do. I think it's one of the best books ever written. And I don't say that lightly, because there are a lot of good books out there. A lot of books which should be enjoyed, which should be loved. But this book is a dream. It is a cherished dream. And anybody, all you wonderful people out there should be into this. Should be into this book. Even if you don't like Doctor Who, this is a book to read. Even if it never gets you into Doctor Who, which I hope it does, still a book to read because it deals with time travel, it deals with the Doctor and a villain trying to take over the world. It deals with the wit and witticism of not only Time Lords but humans as well. There's a lot of technobabble in it, because there's a lot of technobabble in Doctor Who. It's science fiction. They make stuff up on the fly. They always did back in the day, and they still do today, I'm pretty sure. They just make stuff up, pull answers out of the big answer cloud in the sky. It's like, well, we need something to stop this villain. Deus Ex Machina, boom, easily done. It's how the series has always been, and how everything, and how it really works. Because, yeah, maybe it is Deus Ex Machina, maybe it is pulling the answer out of the big answer cloud, but it works for Doctor Who because it has that sensibility to it. And this book has all that sensibility. They don't pull an answer out of the answer cloud. It's really in there. It makes sense in terms of the narrative that this book is trying to tell, the way it all ends, which I will not spoil. But suffice it to say, the Doctor does win in the end because, well, he's the Doctor. He kind of always does win in the end. So yes, I really think you should read this. So, for this week, my friends, you should be reading Shada, The Lost Doctor Who Adventure by Douglas Adams and Gareth Roberts. And I'm going to leave you with this. At the age of 5, Skagra decided emphatically that God did not exist. This revelation tends to make most people in the universe who have it react in one of two ways, with relief or with despair. Only Skagra responded to it by thinking, wait a second, that means there's a situation vacant. Now, many years later, Skagra rested his head, the most important head in the universe, against the padded interior of his alcove, and listened to the symphony of agonized screams coming from all around him. He permitted himself 2 smiles per day, and considered using one of them now. After all, the sounds of wrenching mental anguish and physical distress were a sure sign that his plan was working, and that this was going to be a good day, possibly even a 9 out of 10. So he might have even more cause to smile later on, and he didn't want to waste a smile. He decided to save it, just in case. Instead, as the screams faded slowly into bewildered animal whimpers and the occasional howl of uncomprehending fear, Skagra climbed from his alcove and turned to survey his handiwork. His own alcove was one of 6, an even number, of course, set into the sides of a tall gray hexagonal cone at the center of the main laboratory. At the top of the cone was a gray sphere. Minutes before, he had watched as the other 5 members of the think tank climbed into their alcoves, laughing and joking in their irritatingly trivial way. They hadn't even noticed that there were connecting terminals built into the headrests of all of their alcoves, but no such terminals built into his own. Why were other people so stupid? Skagra wondered. Even these people, who were so clever, were basically stupid. He had wondered this every few seconds for as long as he could remember. Still, thanks to him, thanks to the plan, of which this moment was a significant part, soon other people would no longer be a problem. The 5 think-tankers stood gibbering in their alcoves, their eyes blank, limbs making the occasional spasmodic movement. It was interesting that the bodies of all 5 had survived the process. Now to check on their minds. Skagra entered a command code into one of the many panels of instruments that lined the walls of the laboratory. It was a cursory, automatic gesture. If a lesser, sillier person had conceived this plan, not that anybody else could have conceived this plan, they would have rigged up a big, melodramatic, silly red lever to activate the sphere. Skagra congratulated himself on not doing this. The command code chirruped, and the sphere started to vibrate. A confused babble of thin, inhuman voices issued from its interior. It was the sound of thought. Messy, disorganized, arbitrary, no words distinguishable. Skagra raised a hand. The sphere's command program reacted instantly. It detached itself from the top of the cone and zoomed towards him, coming to rest in his palm. Its touch was metallic and ice cold. Skagra's fingertips curved round the surface of the sphere. He looked across the laboratory at the slumped figure of Daphne Caldera, her eyes staring moronically into nothing, her lips issuing bubbly baby's noises. Caldera, whose specialty was 6-dimensional wave equations. Skagra had never found the time to explore this particular avenue of research beyond the rudiments. Obviously, ZZ equals bracket C2 bracket times 4. Everyone knew that. But Caldera had taken the study of 6-dimensional wave equations into an entirely innovative area. A whole new dimension, you might say, she had joked yesterday, and Skagra had been forced to sacrifice one of his smiles just to look like one of the herd. Now, his fingers on the sphere, Skagra applied his own mind to a complex 6-dimensional wave equation problem. Sigma is less than cross delta if backwards d is constant, so beta cross delta delta plus approximately c, if expressed as zag bb gog equals, the answer popped into his mind. Greater than times 12. Of course, it seemed so obvious. Now, it was obvious. The process had worked, but Skagra decided on one more check, a deeper probe of the sphere's potentialities. In the alcove next to Caldera, C.J. Akrotiri was slumped, his fingers making tiny circling movements, his mouth hanging open, discharging a string of drool. Akrotiri, the legendary neurogeneticist, whose research into dendritic pathway alteration had led to a cure for Musham's disease. Skagra thought of Akrotiri, deciding on a suitable test question, and suddenly, overwhelmingly, a memory tumbled into his mind. I'm standing on the beach, a skimboard under my arm. I'm trying to look muscly and confident, but you can't fake confidence or muscliness, and I feel like a fool, and I'm wondering why I ever thought this was a good idea, and suddenly she is there, and she looks so good, and I look so bad, and she's asking me, do I want to skim over to the island, and does she mean with her, and of course she means with her, and so we get on the board, and I'm dying inside, and she puts her arms around my back, and I kick off, and suddenly we're skimming over the water under a purple night sky, and she rests her head on my shoulder, and I think, did she mean to do that? And she doesn't take her head away, and I can't believe it, and I skim clean onto the island like a pro, which I've never done before, and she falls onto the sand, and I go up to her, help her up, and she laughs and pulls me down, and suddenly she's kissing me and my head spinning, and this can't be happening to me, and then in a flash I can see it. I can see how dendritic decay can be reversed by the early introduction of fluon particle into genome A-A/55667. Skagra shook himself. It was to be expected that some traces of personality and experience might, on occasion, corrupt the data during retrieval. He would increase the sphere's filter capacity to ensure such irrelevant sentimental trash would never again get in the way of the important things in life. Then he released the sphere, which bobbed in the air following its master as he crossed to the main communications panel. With another casual cursory movement, he activated the message he had prepared earlier. Then he swept out of the laboratory, the sphere accompanying him. His own voice echoed around the laboratory. This is a recorded message. The Foundation for Advanced Scientific Studies is under strict quarantine. Do not approach. I repeat, do not approach. Everything is under our control. The message began to repeat itself, transmitting on all frequencies out into space, but not very far out into space. Skagra wanted the message to keep any passing spacecraft away from the think tank, and the word quarantine had a very definite effect on most beings, Skagra had found. It changed statements such as, I wonder if we could help those poor people, Captain, into statements such as, it's the plague, scream, scream, let's get out of here with incredible reluctance and at incredible speed. The message rang out loudly in the central laboratory of the think tank, and the people who were supposedly the greatest minds in the universe, flapping and babbling in their alcoves, couldn't understand a word of it. Skagra walked calmly, he always walked calmly, down the corridors from the laboratory to the shuttle bay. There were 4 docking positions built into the hull of the space station. Illuminated signs showed that docks 1, 2, and 3 were occupied by standard shuttlecraft, 3-seaters with enough fuel to reach the outskirts of galactic civilization. Skagra walked calmly past docks 1, 2, and 3, the sphere following, and pressed his palm onto the locking panel for the unoccupied dock 4. The airlock swung open into empty space. Skagra walked calmly and confidently through into what appeared to be absolute nothingness. He was on his way. And if that doesn't get your attention, well, I don't know what will. So yes, until next time, remember, you should be reading.